first, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. This is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. We are live. I wanted to pull this up here because this is something that we're going to be discussing here on the show today. I'm talking about the Owyhee Canyonlands. We're going to get into that here in just a minute, but I do want to remind you, in case you don't know, this is Fox 12 Now. We're live streaming here from the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom, and we are here every weekday starting around 1 p.m. Pacific, going throughout the afternoon, covering a wide range of topics. And you can find us at kptv.com under the Fox 12 Now tab, the Fox 12 Oregon app on whatever device you're on or television, and of course on YouTube as well. So plenty of places to watch it live or share it afterwards. The Owyhee Canyonlands are there in Eastern Oregon, and an incredible part of this state. Obviously beautiful, as you just saw right there, and there is a push now to grant it national monument status. And we have two of the people who are behind that. There's a lot of people behind this push for this status, but we have two joining us right now, and I want to bring them on here, and I want to make sure I get their titles right. So we've got Ryan Houston, the Executive Director of the Oregon Natural Desert Association, and we have Aaron Kindle, the Director of Sporting Advocacy at the National Wildlife Federation. And both of you, thanks for being here to talk about this and talk about some of these amazing natural places that we have here in Oregon, this one in particular, and this push. And we're going to get into that and talk about the Canyonlands, but I was hoping we could just get to know each of you really quick as well to find out about your organizations and maybe your role in this and interest in this. And starting off, Aaron, would you mind just explaining the National Wildlife Federation and what that is?
Sure. The National Wildlife Federation is one of the oldest and largest conservation organizations in the country, founded in 1936 by famous folks like Dean Darling and with help from Theodore Roosevelt and, those types of folks, real luminaries in our conservation history. So we've been around since about 1936. Lots of folks may know things like Ranger Rick. We do things like, educate kids about wildlife and habitat. And then we have everything from gardening for wildlife to water campaigns to, conservation campaigns that protect, chunks of wild country like we're talking about today. And that's where I really come in. I work with hunters and anglers across the country to really try to protect hunting and angling values. And, luckily those values really align with a lot of conservationists because habitat is really what we're protecting. And that's what got us into this campaign.
Something important for everybody across the board there. And I did have some Ranger Rick magazines growing up, so I'm very familiar with Ranger Rick. And Ryan, let's, if you don't mind, just explaining your organization too and what you do.
Absolutely, yeah. So here at Oregon Natural Desert Association, we are focused on high desert conservation in central and eastern Oregon. We work on about 12 million acres of public land that span from central Oregon and the Bend vicinity across the John Day region, the greater Hart-Sheldon, and then, of course, through Steens Mountain and out into the Owyhee Canyonlands. And we're an organization that represents 6,000 members from, believe it or not, we have members from all the states in the United States. And what we advocate for is good conservation management of these public lands. And we do that through various campaigns, such as the Owyhee Canyonlands campaign. We do that in the administrative process as various agencies are figuring out how to manage and steward these lands. We also do that through hands-on restoration work, where volunteers get out and do various types of habitat restoration projects. And so we're an organization that's been working since the 1980s. Focused in on bringing the public into the public land planning process to make sure that the incredible, magical high desert of Eastern Oregon is well cared for and well managed for the future.
I mean, that's such a huge area right there that you were just mentioning of covering that. Yeah. And that's a lot of, I would imagine that takes a lot of volunteers or a lot of people involved with the organization to help manage all of those projects across that huge expanse.
It certainly does, and obviously we have priorities, and that's really where the Owyhee comes in. The Owyhee Canyonlands is one of the most rugged, remote, incredible corners of Oregon's high desert. It includes a river system that flows out of, believe it or not, Nevada and Idaho through Oregon and ultimately down into the Snake River. And it's just an incredible landscape. For people who haven't been to that corner of Oregon, they'll be surprised to see 1,000-foot cliffs, deep rushing rivers, expansive sagebrush plains, and just really incredible habitat. And so we focus in on some of these key places like the Owyhee because they're worthy of that really intensive effort to try to give them the protection they deserve.
It is so beautiful over there. But one thing I just realized, because I think I was just mispronouncing it, and this could be a big issue for probably a lot of people who may see the name a lot, but don't hear it pronounced. Can you do it one more time just so we all know exactly how to pronounce the canyon?
Yeah, we pronounce it Owyhee.
Owyhee. Okay.
Owyhee,
Good.
and it actually has roots in the word Hawaii. And if you look at really old maps of Hawaii, Hawaii is actually spelled Owyhee. And that goes all the way back to the history of the naming of the landscape, where there were some Hawaiian explorers that got lost in that country. And that's why it ultimately became named the Owyhee.
Wow, that's really fascinating. Okay, so I mean, it sounded so much like it, but I figured that was just a coincidence. So really interesting right there. But that's just the naming of it. But this territory, this area there is pretty fascinating. Can you give us just a little bit more context as far as where it's at? And you mentioned some of those different things, as far as those canyons and sages and all the different, rivers. But for everybody, if they can get like a mental picture of where this is at and how expansive this is.
Yeah, so if you're looking at a map of Oregon, the Owyhee is in the far southeastern corner of the state. And the Owyhee watershed, which spans about 10,000 square miles, includes parts of Nevada, parts of Idaho, and a big chunk is located in Oregon. And one of the things I love about that landscape is just how remote and rugged it is. It's a place where you have incredibly dark night skies. If you look at one of those maps of the United States at night where you see all the lights, the Owyhee is one of the big dark spots. And it's because it's a fairly undeveloped landscape. And it's a landscape that possesses literally millions of acres of wilderness quality lands. And when we talk about wilderness quality lands, we're talking about lands that are intact, that are in their natural condition. And these are the places that are worthy of the highest level of protection that we have in public lands management. And so that's why we're advocating for either wilderness through an act of Congress or national monument through an act of the Biden administration.
And so when we talk about doing those designations, if it does get a designation of national monument status, what does that mean for that area?
Yeah, essentially what it does, I think the shortest way to explain it is that it protects the landscape as it currently is. And so it prevents future development such as mining, road building, other kinds of industrial development that would chop up the habitat. And so one of the things that we're most interested in when we're conserving these large landscapes is keeping the habitat connected and intact. And so if you slice a road through it, if you put a mine in the middle of it, that changes how wildlife move across the landscape, and it fragments the habitat. And from our perspective, from a biodiversity conservation perspective, that's incredibly important. But obviously from the National Wildlife Federation's perspective, for hunters and anglers out there enjoying the landscape that way, that kind of habitat integrity is incredibly important as well. And so essentially it protects the landscape as it is now so that it can remain healthy, intact, vibrant, and a wonderful place to recreate, to enjoy, to appreciate long into the future.
Well, and going back to something you were bringing up at the beginning there, there is so much cohesiveness between conservation efforts and for anglers and hunters wanting to also preserve the land for those reasons as well. And to that extent, can you talk about that? What this push means for angler and hunter organizations that are out there?
Yeah, and I might turn that question over to Aaron, because Aaron is deeply involved in this as well and has that unique perspective.
Sure. I think, Greg, Ryan created a lot of great segue for this because, one of the things we like to say is habitat equals opportunity, right? Opportunity to hunt and fish. And when you're talking about the couple of million acres of unroaded landscapes that Ryan mentioned, there's an unparalleled conservation opportunity here. You just don't have that kind of landscape size left in the lower 48 that has a full complement of flora and fauna, that's native to the area. And so with that kind of opportunity becomes incredible hunting and fishing opportunity. We have the opportunity to conserve a entire winter to summer migration paths for mule deer, for elk, for California desert bighorn sheep. We have some really rare fish in the red-bound trout in the upper stretches of the watershed. We have other cold water species. We have warm water species. This is the kind of stuff that, diehard hunters and anglers really live for. And they need these kinds of places to, continue to carry on their traditions and to continue to, create that conservation opportunity that in turn also creates the funding for a lot of these wildlife agencies. And so this is a special place. Folks come from all over the place. It's a little bit, unknown, but the folks who know it as a really fantastic place and do a lot to to take care of it and get out there as much as they can.
I mean, I think that's kind of a good thing in a way, you know, to have it there remote like that. And if you make your way out there, then you get to learn how special it is. And, you know, looking at this push for this national monument status, you know, there's a lot of organizations. There's your two organizations, and you're not the only ones involved. There's lots of people, seems, coming together for this, and all for this common cause. So since you are together, working towards this national monument status, what does it take to have something like that granted?
I'll go ahead and jump in on that one, and feel free to add on, Aaron. What we're calling for here is an act by the President of the United States. The President of the United States can establish a national monument under the Antiquities Act via a proclamation, and essentially that proclamation is a document that the President adopts that says this is a special place and this is why, and therefore we as the American public are going to protect and manage this place with these specific provisions in mind. And what I think is really important is when we are working as a coalition, as a team, we're working with an incredibly diverse group of people. We have there are 2 tribal nations that have endorsed this, called on the president for this action. There are groups like our groups, conservation groups, hunting groups. There are local recreation groups, visitors associations, chambers of commerce, you name it, businesses. We have a support book that's about 600 pages long with letters in there for people from all walks of life, all different perspectives coming together saying, we care about this place. It has really unique values. And so we want it protected. If Congress is unable to move and unable to act on the legislation that has been pending in Congress now for going on 5 years, then it's time for the president to act. And the president can come in, protect this landscape, and really give it that long-term management and care that it deserves.
And so with that signature, it would happen. I'm sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
Well, I was just going to add to that a little bit, because I think the other important thing to note here is Senator Wyden. You know, Senator Ron Wyden has introduced legislation. It's been around for about 5 years now. One of the reasons we've decided to really start pushing a monument is because that legislation hasn't moved. You know, there's been very little movement over the past 5 years. We applaud and really appreciate Senator Wyden's work. But as we know, sometimes things in Congress get stalled and, you know, don't move. And we know that the threats and the continued degradation, the population of places like Boise, for instance, and more visitors to this place, those things are going to create a degradation issues. And this place hasn't had a travel management plan. It hasn't had some of even the basic things, you know, on large landscapes that are required to protect and appropriately manage these areas. So if we don't do something soon, you know, we're going to watch some of these values we've talked about degrade, and none of us want to see that. So that's one of the reasons I just wanted to point out that we're pivoting to a national monument.
And that makes sense. And with that expanding population, and on top of that, just to understand how it is now, so, you know, it's crossing multiple states, obviously a big part here in Oregon, but crossing multiple states there. So who does manage that area right now?
The Bureau of Land Management is largely responsible for managing this area. In Idaho, there is some Forest Service land in the Owyhee watershed, but the Bureau of Land Management manages this landscape. And the other good thing for hunters and anglers I should mention is BLM managed national monuments are open to hunting and fishing. There's 9 different federal agencies that can manage a national monument, sometimes in concert, you know, a couple of them, 2 or 3 of them, sometimes even with state agencies. But in this case, it would be a BLM managed national monument, which definitely keeps it open to hunting and fishing. And so that's one of the things that we like to see, is it kind of conserves these opportunities in perpetuity.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, it is worth pointing out that the monument proposal we're talking about here is just in Oregon. And that's because it is focused on the exact same footprint that Senator Wyden and Senator Merkley developed for their legislative proposal. And so there's really 2 pathways here. Congress can act on the legislative proposal, the president can act on the monument proposal, but either way, the landscape is protected.
So one of those needs to go through, though, and it sounds like with this delay for 5 years in Congress, hoping the national monument push would be the faster and easier route. It sounds like, and I know, you know, for people here around Portland, around the state, you may be seeing some of these signs, and you have this push here too to, let me pull that back up there. Can you just tell us about these signs and what it is? It's obviously says, Dear Senator Wyden. So what's the message that you're sending to him?
Yeah, I can talk about those a little bit. Our organization, along with our partners, Trout Unlimited and Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, deployed those signs. They're really, you know, for the past handful of months, this campaign has kind of sat quietly. Yet, as I mentioned, some things have continued to be threats to the area, and we feel like it's time to do something in 2024. Senator Wyden has done a great job in holding town halls and listening to folks, and we know that he continues to hear, we want this place protected. So it's just a way to help the public understand that there's this overwhelming support from a huge swath of different user groups and interests, and get that message out there across Portland and across Oregon, so folks know. When you talk to Senator Wyden at these town halls, mention the Owyhee area. Talk about the values there. There's just too much value there to continue to let this stagnate. And so we just really wanted to use this moment to let folks know, try to get them excited, and see if we can get this done in 2024.
Well, to that extent, you mentioned talking to Wyden if you do happen to be at a town hall, or bringing it up to him to help push that along. What are some other ways that people can support what you're trying to do here really for everybody in the state, for everybody in the country, to keep this land pristine? What can they do to help?
I'll jump in with a couple of things. You could go to the website, protecttheowyhee.org. You can sign the petition. That's certainly helpful. We currently have 70,000 petition signers. So a number of people have taken that action. You could write letters to the editor of your local newspaper, certainly talk to your elected representatives, whether those are your members of the House or members of the Senate, Wyden or Merkley. Similarly, you can reach out, believe it or not, with a letter directly to the president himself, and asking him to recognize the important value of protecting the Owyhee with a national monument. You can get in touch with us via the Protect the Owyhee website, and we're happy to also connect you with other opportunities as well.
Well, thank you.
I would add one more.
Oh, go ahead.
Great.
Go ahead, Aaron.
I would add one more, just to check out huntfishowyhee.org. That's where you can learn a little bit more about the hunting and fishing values and some of the wildlife values. And you have an opportunity to engage there as well. So folks can check that out.
A lot of opportunities there, so people can get involved and help push this along. And I want to thank both of you for coming on here too, just to talk about this and explain it for maybe people who don't know, maybe people didn't realize this push is going on, and how important this is to protect that area of the state and that natural wildlife like you mentioned. I mean, just wildlife habitat, all of it. And thank you to both of you for joining me here on Fox 12 Now. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you, Greg.
You bet. And for everybody watching too, we are live, so I do want to let you know that we're here in the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom. We're going to take a quick break here in a minute. We cover a lot of things here on Fox 12 Now. In the next subject, we're going from the Owyhee to Gary Oldman. I don't know how to make that transition, but that's what's going to be happening. I've got Gary Oldman, actually, who is going to be here on this show to talk about his show, Slow Horses. It's a quick interview, but it is going to be great. So you're going to get to see that here. That's an exclusive here with Gary Oldman on Fox 12 Now. And so that's coming up on whatever platform you're on right now. You can watch it there. If you're watching live, just join back in about, less than 10 minutes. If you're watching afterward, you might be able to watch it on demand right now. So download that Fox 12 Oregon app, kptv.com, click on the Fox 12 Now tab, YouTube, all those places. But thank you all for joining us. I will talk to you in just a few. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.